Hi, my name is Oluwakorede Asuni. You may call me Olu for short. I feel excited to be here on the BA Fringe, and today I'll be talking to us on the subject of gamification. What is gamification? How do we as business analysts, how can we help our businesses adopt gamification as a strategy, building stickiness into our products? And what are the tools and frameworks out there available to guide our adoption journey? Come along as we deep dive into this subject. So you might be wondering, what are some examples of gamification out there in the world? Perhaps the most common one, especially given the lockdown and our collective interest in staying fit. We might have seen the Apple rings on our Apple watches. That is an example of gamification. Have you ever tried to close those rings? You've participated or you've been engaged in a gamified experience. While your goals just set and presented to you, you might not be as motivated to complete those constituting activities that would help you close the rings. But given the fact that you have presented a ring that you need, or a set of rings that you need to perform different activities to close, and you get an immediate feedback every time you partook in the activity or activities that will help close at least one ring, and you see the ring move, you get motivated to want to continue to close the ring. You get motivated to want to continue to participate or partake in those activities to ensure that at the end of the day, you have closed your fitness loop. So, what are game mechanics? Game mechanics are those tools that are used to sustain interest in games. And there are three of them that are most popular, quite popular. And the three are points, badges, and leaderboards. So points are awarded upon completion of a specified point earning task. So you set up your gamified experience such that customers need to complete, or players need to complete, several actions in the course of their gamified experience. And for every challenge or micro challenge that a customer or player completes, you reward a point. Badges. Badges are allocated at the end of a collection of challenges or micro challenges to signify that the player had come thus far in a gamified experience or in a gamified journey. Badges are usually shareable. I'm sure you've seen some badges on LinkedIn earned outside of LinkedIn, of course, on learning management platforms or online schools or massive open online courses. Majority of the time, these platforms have adopted gamification to ensure that students complete several units towards completing the entire online course. What we've seen in the past is that the completion rate for online courses was about 5%. So only 5 out of 100 people who take online courses complete them. And these platforms have adopted several tools to help drive engagement with the students and drive completion, one of which is gamification. And so you find that while some platforms might not award points for unit completions, they award badges for unit completions or after you've completed a set of units. And seeing your journey towards completing an entire, seeing your journey from where you are to getting a badge, a braggable, shareable badge, sometimes drive the emotional connection to want to stay on and stay the course and complete the recommended tasks. Now, a third element of or mechanic, a third game mechanic that is used widely in gamification is the idea of leaderboards. Leaderboards simply shows people of similar skill sets who are playing the same game, shows their performance compared to one another. So a leaderboard may be showing the top 10 players, or might be showing all players in the gamified experience, and shows where an individual is relative to the rest of the players. So a player will then see that, okay, I'm in the middle of the pack. There are 50 people underneath me or behind me that I'm ahead of, and there are about 20 people that are ahead of me, and that could lead to gameful strategies to say, okay, how do I move from being number 21 on the leaderboard to being number 20? And then we go back to the rule book to see what are the set of activities that I need to complete or actions that we need to take in order to score more points. And we check to see how many of such points we need to score in order to move from our current ranking to the next possible ranking. So points, badges, and leaderboards are some of the most widely used game mechanics out there in the world. There are advocates who argue that when purpose is not known, abuse becomes imminent. So perhaps we should discuss quickly the purpose of gamification. So I pose the question to myself every time I'm talking to people about gamification. I pose a question to my audience, which is, why gamify? Look, if this was a live session, it would have been interesting to hear. Okay, let's do this. I'll give you 20 seconds to type into the chat or what have you, why we should gamify. What is the justification for gamification? Okay, so one key reason why we gamify is because the idea of homo economicus, the idea that humans only make rational decisions when confronted with all facts, does not hold true. So it's never the case that people go all out to consider all the facts before taking the decision. Well, in certain areas of our lives we do that, but the vast majority of decisions we take has got some elements of irrationality embedded in it. Not the willingness or the deliberate willingness to want to be stupid or the deliberate willingness to do the wrong thing, but on the balance of facts, you would realize that there was a lot more emotions involved in the decision. So you're sitting, you have 4 or 5 candidates before you, all highly qualified, all brilliant people, and you need to select one of them. They've all scored in the 75th percentile. They've all wild interview panel and all that. You'd find out that the final decision boils down to how you feel about some of the candidates. Some will call it gut feel. Some will call it knowing from experience. And who could call it any number of things. But the truth is that most of our decisions are underpinned by some emotional connection or disconnect from the subject at hand. So why gamify? To nudge people to sometimes take actions that are good for them. So I always argue that in a gamified environment, there are usually 2 major actors. The gamifier, or the owner of the game or the platform, which usually is a business who expects or wants or needs people, individuals, to take certain actions. They want certain behaviors amplified within their target audience. It could be that they want you to keep logging into an app on a daily basis. It could be that they want you, like the Apple example or other fitness app examples, they want you to complete a set of objectives on a daily basis. And they know that just asking you to take those steps, presenting you with all of the peer-reviewed articles on that subject in the world might not be sufficient. Then they create a channel, a stickiness tool, via which they engage with you emotionally. So back to the Apple example, the rings engage with an emotional core, with our emotional core. our interest to not miss out, our interest to not be seen as losers, our interest to complete that thing which we started. So what are the tools are available out there to assist in properly adopting gamification? Look, there are quite a number of tools, but perhaps the best, the most popular tool out there is Octalysis, the Octalysis framework. The Octalysis framework is a human-centered gamification design framework that lays out the 8 core drives for human motivation. And the framework was developed by a gentleman named Yukai Chao. Mr. Yukai Chao argued that every individual wants meaning. They want meaningfulness out of their engagement. As such, when we are creating a gamified experience or environment, we need to ensure that there is a meaningfulness attached to the game we're asking people to do. People need to be able to connect their experience in that game to something bigger than them, something almost aspirational, if not totally aspirational. He argues that human beings pander towards being empowered. So your gamified environment or your gamified project must be one that provides a measure of empowerment, a measure of uplifting, a measure of moving individuals from a point to a different point. Something that creates a sense of making progress. Your gamified experiences must have some elements of social influence, or must help players create some element of social influence. That really comes to play when your gamified experiences includes a leaderboard. Leaderboards would show your player relative to other players in the game and shows their performance. And that does 2 things. One, for players who are ahead of the pack, it gives them an opportunity to brag. We all like to brag. Yeah, even the most modest of us likes to. Yeah, I did that. Yeah, I scored that point and all of that. And for those who are slightly behind, it gives them a challenge to want to. It gives them a sense that the next point is scoreable. Progress at the game or in the experience or in the engagement is possible. Avoidance. It's important that we build avoidance into our gamified experiences. Avoidance simply means that you build in a risk factor in the gamified experience. An example would be that in your gamified experience, points that have been collected towards a broader goal becomes elusive if the customer or the player does not continue to play. So an example would be if you haven't logged in, if you've scored 20 points out of 30 or 40 points total scoreable in a level of a game that you're playing, and you haven't logged in 3 days, you lose those points. What then that does is that it helps build stickiness. The customer or the player would continue to show up in the game in order not to lose accumulated points. Unpredictability. It's important that your games have some elements of surprise. If the player can, we've all seen movies that we could tell the end from at the beginning, and usually we slip off in the course of those movies, or we lose interest quickly and move on to other things before the movie ends or before the movie gets to its climax. You don't want that to happen to your gamified experience or to your gamified project. So it's super important that you build some elements of unpredictability into the game. Ownership. Your players shouldn't feel forced to play. So when building a gamified experience, it's super, I can't overemphasize this. It's super important that all players play willingly. Of course, you can market the idea of the game to them. You can tell them what you want them to do. You can tell them what they stand to benefit if they state the course. But it's super important that you don't tie their next proportion to their participation in the game. You don't tie the completion or the fulfillment of their order to their completion of certain tasks that do not tie directly to the actual purchase journey. So it's super important that when building our gamified experiences for our customers, that we ensure that the customer can have a sense of ownership. They can feel that I'm doing this of my own volition, and I own my experience. I own what's going on here. And when gamers own their own experiences, when they can navigate the system without restriction, and when they don't feel compelled to navigate the system, they usually stay the course and navigate for longer. Another element that we need to build into our gamification experiences is a sense of accomplishment. And this usually is done using points and badges, where for the successful completion of a challenge or micro challenge successfully is rewarded. Rewarded in a way that can be showcased, rewarded in a way that makes sense to the players, rewarded in a way that is somewhat useful to the player. So my medical insurance company here in South Africa, they ask me to take certain steps relative to my health every month, and every week. And at the end of every week, they check to see if I've met all of the challenges that I agreed to at the beginning of the week. And where I have, I get points that are redeemable towards coffee at my favorite coffee shop. And being a coffee aficionado, guess what? Yep, I'm always eating the targets. And majority of the people around me that I know of as well are always eating the targets. The other thing they've done too is they allow friends to come together on their platform and tackle similar challenges together. And your leaderboard is displayed showing who is ahead of the pack and who is somewhere in the pack. And majority of the time, you find that this creates an heightened sense of friendly competitiveness amongst the players. And this ensures that all players reach their targets. Now, it's super important that I mention as well that when gamifying an experience, there should be mutual benefit between the players and the platform or the platform owners. And I'll explain. So when gamification is strictly to benefit those who have created the gaming platform, then there's a tendency that you are exploiting your users or your players. And that does not go down well with anybody. It's just a matter of time for that gamified experience to lose its attraction. But where you're nudging individuals and groups of people to take actions that are beneficial to them, but that they might not take normally on their own or by themselves, then you might be applying gamification for good. So, gamification should be adopted in scenarios where people will normally be reluctant to do things that are good for themselves. It's super important that we look for that sweet spot between business intent and customer benefit. And in that sweet spot, the place is super important that we seek the sweet spot between business objectives and overall customer benefits. And in that overlapping area, we build our gamified experience. Look, I hope this has been interesting for you. I know it's a lot to fit into 6-8 minutes, but should you have questions, I want to stay in touch. Adrian would share my contact details at the end of this clip. And thank you very much, Adrian, for having me. And I look forward to joining you again on Be a Fringe. Thank you very much.